On a freezing winter morning in 1963, the day began long before the school bus arrived. The sun wasn't up yet. In many parts of the country, it wouldn't be for a while. Winter that year was colder than usual. The winter of 1962 to 1963 would later be remembered as one of the harshest in decades. With deep cold settling in and refusing to leave. Inside the house, the air was still cold when you woke up. Heat took time back then. Furnaces worked slowly. Radiators hissed and clicked, trying to warm rooms that had grown cold overnight. Getting out of bed meant bracing yourself. Wool blankets were heavy and warm, but the moment you stepped onto the floor, the cold found you. Bedrooms were chilly. Hallways even more so. The bathroom was the coldest place in the house. Parents were already awake, not scrolling through phones or checking messages, but moving quietly through the kitchen. Coffee was brewing. Breakfast was simple. Toast, cereal, maybe eggs if there was time. Children got dressed near the warmest part of the house. Coats were thick and stiff from yesterday's cold. Scarves were wrapped tight. Mittens were pulled on, taken off, and pulled on again. Someone always complained they couldn't find the other mitten. Boots were heavy. Socks were thick. Everything felt bulky, but necessary. Outside, the world was silent in a way that only winter can manage. Snow covered sidewalks and lawns. The street looked wider, softer. Sound didn't travel far. The cold air stung your face the moment you stepped outside. Breath turned white instantly. Each step made a crunching sound against the snow or frozen ground. Children walked to the bus stop slowly, shoulders hunched, hands tucked deep into pockets or pressed into mittens. Some walked alone. Others joined friends along the way, greeting each other with quiet voices. No one lingered longer than necessary. The cold didn't allow it. The bus stop was usually nothing special. A street corner, a mailbox, the end of a driveway. Sometimes just a familiar patch of sidewalk where everyone knew to wait. On mornings like this, the bus was never early, and it often felt late. Kids stood, shifting their weight from foot to foot, trying to keep warm. Some stamped their boots against the ground. Others rubbed their hands together, blowing into their mittens for warmth. Scarves were pulled higher, hats tugged lower. Faces grew red from the cold. Someone always joked about hoping the bus wouldn't come at all. Snow days were still rare in 1963. Schools didn't close easily. Even after heavy snowfall, there was an expectation that classes would go on. Children listened for the sound long before the bus appeared. On cold mornings, engines struggled. You could hear it before you saw it. the low rumble growing louder down the street. When the bus finally came into view, headlights cutting through the pale winter light, there was a quiet sense of relief. The bus door folded open with a familiar sound. Warm air spilled out, fogging the windows almost instantly. Kids climbed the steps quickly, stamping snow from their boots. Inside, the bus smelled like wet coats, wool, and cold metal slowly warming up. Seats were cold at first. Vinyl stuck slightly to bare skin if gloves were off. Windows fogged over. Children traced shapes and names with their fingers, watching the frost melt where they touched the glass. The bus pulled away slowly, tires crunching over snow-packed roads. Houses passed by, their windows glowing softly in the early morning. Some kids talked quietly. Others stared out the window, lost in thought. Mornings like this made you feel awake in a different way. The cold stayed with you, even as the bus warmed. The ride wasn't fast. Roads were slippery. Drivers were cautious. Everyone understood that winter controlled the pace. At school, the bus unloaded into another wave of cold. Children hurried inside, coats brushing against each other, boots leaving wet marks on the floor. Classrooms were warmer, but it took time. Coats were hung on hooks. Mittens dripped onto the floor. Radiators hissed and popped, working hard against the winter air. Fingers slowly thawed. Faces returned to normal color. The day began. Looking back now, those mornings stand out because they were easy, but because they were shared. Everyone waited together. Everyone felt the same cold. The same relief when the bus finally arrived. There were no distractions, no screens to escape into. Just the present moment, the cold air, and the quiet understanding that this was simply how winter mornings were. For many, the winter of 1963 left a lasting impression. It taught patience, it taught resilience, and it created memories that stayed long after the cold was gone. Those bus stops are still there in many neighborhoods. The corners, the mailboxes, the end of the driveway. But the mornings feel different now. If you were there, waiting for the school bus on a freezing winter morning in 1963, you remember exactly how it felt. And if this story brought back a memory for you, take a moment to sit with it. If you enjoy remembering these quiet moments from America's past, consider subscribing to this channel. New stories like this are shared here regularly, preserving the everyday memories that once meant so much. Thank you for waiting with us and for remembering.